Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Do you think you can identify as an attack helicopter?
No, but do you think that you can identify as transrace? Like
Yes.
transracial?
Yeah, I
I think
actually
so
do believe
too.
in that.
I think
Oh no!
Destiny went from fully bored playing his
It's
video
like,
game to like, what are we going? What's going on here? What
I
just
know.
happened?
I know, it's so funny. I didn't even think about that. He's like wakes up. He's like, "Can you be transracial?" Suddenly he's like, "Bling!" Like, wait a minute.
Where did we go?
God, Rachel Dolezal, everybody. You know, she wants to be black. She can be black, right? It's fine. It's only fine. Red Dragon 412 for $20 says, "As an anarcho-libertarian, I take offense that you would call this postmodern trash anarcho-libertarian. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
We offended someone's
I know.
category, someone's political designation.
I know.
We try to respect all political designations.
We do. Even when we mock them relentlessly.
Yes.
Sharp Fanataku. Hey, Dev. For 5 Canadian says, "Get well soon, Sitch. Don't forget to get vaxxed." Oh, I've been so vaxxed. That's probably why
Really?
I can't even make that joke. I'll get kicked off YouTube.
I know.
But no,
You've been so vaxxed. You did the Moderna and the Johnson
I've
& Johnson
the
and the
and the
Pfizer.
Johnson & Johnson and the what's the other one?
The Pfizer. Yeah.
The Pfizer.
That's not true. We only got the Pfizer. I think we both got Pfizer.
It's like, Pokemon. You gotta catch them all. You gotta catch all the vaccines.
Literally.
No, that's not true. Yeah, I got the Pfizer, but now I'm fine.
Yes, we're good. We're now super spreaders, so
that's right.
I hope I've infected everyone who's unvaxxed. I do a lot of handshaking now.
Look, it's better to be a super spreader than a super receiver, right? Come on.
Now I do the spit in my palm. Put her there.
You're like, the quicker these people die off, the less chance that it mutates, right?
Technically, I think that's true.
I don't know. I don't even think that's true at all.
I think that some of the concepts could work. But I don't agree with borrowing the language from trans people because I don't think that it maps on one to one. That's my issue. Like,
that seems like a total punt from Destiny, or a total giving them an out. I don't think they should get.
He's saying transracial's cool just in certain situations. It sounds like it.
I don't know what he's.
What does one-to-one mean?
I'm assuming what he means is like, okay, if someone is like biracial, they can identify as being more of one race than the other or something.
That's not transracial though.
I wouldn't say that's transracial. To me, transracial is someone who is not at all a race and wants to identify
transitions into another race. Yes, right. Exactly. Right. Yes. If you're biracial, yes, you have the advantage of being able. Sometimes you don't have the advantage because society kind of categorizes you, which is kind of fucked up. But
right.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Obama, though he obviously used that to his advantage by saying he was the first black president. But that'd be like if I said, "Oh, I really like anime, so I'm gonna identify as Asian now." I really like Asian culture. I'm identify as Asian. It's like no, fuck you. Okay,
can you
fuck
imagine?
You. No, it's so stupid.
Can you imagine if you're like half Irish, half African American, and you're like, you look completely African American, and everyone is like, they judge you as African American. You're like, no, I'm Irish. Thanks.
What if you had like the thickest Irish accent? That'd be pretty sweet, right?
That actually sounds pretty cool, to be honest.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Dye your beard red, just like a leprechaun everywhere. That'd be pretty sick.
If somebody because if somebody starts talking about quote unquote transracial, like, oh well, maybe there's like a culture or something you identify with, and you don't necessarily look like those people. Yeah, sure, that's all valid, but it's not transracial because like that.
I don't even agree with that. Doesn't even make sense. Okay, saying this is why I hate this obsession with identity. You can like a culture that's not your own. Doesn't mean you identify with it. Like, doesn't mean.
What does that even mean?
I don't even know. Like it's well. Like, the movie Last Samurai?
You do technically identify with it, but it's not your identity.
Well, no, that's what I mean. Yes, you identify with it, but it's not your. But when they say identify, they mean
identity. Yeah.
So it's like in Last Samurai. Okay, Tom Cruise, right?
Yeah, I remember
So Tom
that.
Cruise
Yeah.
goes to Japan. He has a very Western way of thinking from the 1800s or whenever this movie takes place. And slowly he begins to find merit in a lot of the various aspects of Japanese culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they would say, well, he's identifying with it. It's like, well, no, he just appreciates and maybe thinks some aspects of that culture is even better than the culture he came from, which is fine. But that doesn't mean that you're fucking transracial. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what's so bizarre.
That's assimilation, is what it is.
Right. But that's what's so stupid. Well, this is another inherent contradiction on this stuff, is that so much of this neo-Marxian identity politics, they keep saying we're anti-essentialism. Okay, we're anti-essentialism. Yet every argument they make is the most essentialist fucking argument on the planet.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, and when I say essentialist, what I mean is that essentialist, like if you're a race essentialist, you would be saying that there is some intrinsic quality to race that is inherent to that race that you cannot change. Okay.
Right.
So that like being white would grant you some quality that a black person would not have. That's what it would mean to be essentialist.
Well,
and
and
so,
it's essential to that. I mean, I always just think of it as it's an essential component of that race.
right. And it's also an essential component of being white. Okay.
Yes.
And so it's funny because in CRT does the same thing. And there's a reason CRT does this. CRT explicitly says that they think race is anti-essential. And the reason they always do that is because when you read all their arguments, it's like they're all making race essentialist arguments. So it's very confusing. And it's the same thing with culture. They're like, oh, well, these cultures and these races, they act like they're all these essentialistic qualities. So if you want to practice some part of Asian culture, well, you must be transracialist. You have to literally transition your identity to that fucking culture. It's like, that's absurd.
It's funny because we've talked about this before, how they're very anti-assimilation. I think that came up in our talk with Aaron.
They are. Yes. Yes.
Isn't what they're defining transracial as really just assimilation anyway? I mean, it seems like, I don't know how you would define it as assimilation.
The way Destiny described it would be.
Yes.
But usually when I hear other people describe transracialism, they mean like Rachel Dolezal, like you're literally changing your physical appearance to try to match someone of a different race. Right,
but she also did the assimilation thing because the reason why she changed her appearance was because she was so into black culture.
Sure. Yeah, no, so you could definitely classify it that as transracialism is like an extreme form of assimilation. Sure.
That gender identity is so much more internalized, I think, than like you're like the clothes you wear, the music you listen to, like, or the culture, whatever. I think I just don't like the borrowing of the language from that.
I mean,
maybe
the fundamental issue.
Yeah, I don't. Internalized culture is just what the fuck? What does that
it's a
even
contradiction.
mean? Yeah, total contradiction.
But even beyond the internalized culture thing, it's so toxic. It's such a bad fucking idea to say that, these various cultures have their own interests and you're not allowed to have those interests unless you transition to that culture.
I fucking hate that argument. That's Joseph Henrich's Secret of Our Success. If you read that book, it's just a window into how valuable culture is and how malleable culture is. And just this whole idea that we're going to wall off different cultures from one another kind of puts the brakes on cultural evolution in a way that's not remotely helpful. I mean, how can you...
It's destructive.
Like, one of the reasons it makes America great is that we've had so many great cultures to draw upon. We're basically pilfering the most motivated people from all around the world by offering them an environment where they can excel based on their opportunity and merit. So you're just going to attract the most motivated people. All the unmotivated people are obviously going to stay in their home countries. They're going to come here, but they're going to bring the best aspects of their culture with them.
Right.
That we can adopt and use.
Right.
Yeah. But this cultural appropriation argument is evil.
Cultural appropriation is evil. And Bill Maher had an interesting segment this week where he was going all against how wokeism was getting people fired from the Olympics and how cultural appropriation is like the dumbest idea ever.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I never understood this until I started doing all my heavy duty CRT research, because the whole point of cultural appropriation makes no sense. But it only doesn't make sense if you're looking at it from a liberal perspective, from a liberalism perspective, okay? Where we're saying, oh, well, we want to tear down the importance of being a specific race, which is what we're trying to accomplish, what liberalism is trying to accomplish in America. And that's why it doesn't make sense to us. But when you look at it from the neo-Marxist perspective, it completely makes sense, because they do essentialize, even though they pretend they don't, they essentialize culture and map it onto race. And they say it is oppressive. And that's why we get the crazy chart that's like, these are the qualities of whiteness. And it's like punctuality, you know, and being, you know, and being scientifically minded and all this other stuff, is because they are literally saying that different cultures have different essential characteristics, and those characteristics map onto race, and it is oppressive for white people to try to dictate how non-white people behave culturally.
Yeah. So wrong.
And then on top of that, they want to use, you know, this is where intersectionality comes in. They want to use these racial identities as a means of grabbing power in our society. Okay. And so they can only do that if the racial identities exist. And that's why this is the truth about where cultural appropriation comes from. Because think about it. If white, quote unquote, white society adapts black culture, okay, so that it's totally acceptable for a white person to, quote, you know, have black hairstyles at the office and listen to, quote, black music, and even use, you know, quote, black vernacular or whatever.
Oh my God.
Okay? You know, we'll go as deep as possible into, you know, the racism that the neo-Marxists are saying. Okay. If white society adopted all these practices and all these cultural elements of, quote, black culture as a whole, then they literally could not use the black identity as a political means of gaining power anymore, because it would be so integrated with white identity.
Oh my God, you're right. You're totally right.
And that's what's going on here.
That's why they have to wall it off. Otherwise, it's not politically feasible.
Yes. And it's crazy because
that's why they're against integration.
Yeah. That's what was so crazy about what I was telling Aaron on Thursday, is that in the critical race theory Bible, they talk about this concept called race consciousness. And they cite a guy who's a white guy named Gary Peller, who wrote this paper on race consciousness. And he talks about how, and this is the failing, I guess, of our, quote, liberal institution, which I didn't realize, was that during the civil rights movement, there was a very contentious disagreement among how racial equality should look. And you had the, quote, liberal side, which is Martin Luther King Jr. and others, who said we need to be building the colorblind society. And you had the radical side, what we consider the radical left side, which was in favor of not integrating and not being colorblind, but black nationalism and black separatism. And they specifically talked ill about integration, and they used that term. They were anti-integrationists. And these were people like Malcolm X and the Black Panthers. And it's funny because Stokely Carmichael, who's the guy that came up with the term Black Power in Raising the Fist, he's the guy who also came up with the term systemic racism, and he was completely against integration.
Wow.
He was 100% black nationalist. He even moved to Africa because he didn't want to live in America anymore.
Wow, my God. I listened to a Malcolm X interview recently. I've been watching a bunch of Thomas Sowell stuff, and it was in the end of the video. And man, everything that he was saying, he was talking to another guy on a panel. Everything that he was saying was a conversation that could have taken place like yesterday. It
Yeah,
was
it's
so
crazy.
amazing. Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's the thing is in black and white. It's like old TV footage. Like it
Right.
must have been 1965 when this conversation was taking place. And I was thinking, we have not moved one fucking bit. We're still having the same exact conversation. It's so crazy.
Yeah, and that's why what you said was so accurate. We said, well, like this is the regressive movement. Because that's what it is.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
it's frustrating because during the civil rights movement, the liberals or the liberalism side won the argument justly. Okay, justly won the argument. Said we're going to be in favor of building a colorblind society, and now it's like all the fucking radicals have come back with a vengeance. And
Yeah.
the problem is the liberals, like Joy Reid and all the liberals in the media, don't realize that these people making these radical arguments are against them, are subverting liberals and liberalism. They have no fucking clue what's happening because they don't know their history.